Hi everybody, I'm Jeff,
And I'm Linda.
and we're with Virginia Paranormal Investigations, and tonight we're going to venture down to North Carolina to a place called Early Station, where there has been reports for several years about a mysterious ghost light. Now Linda, what's the story?
Well, there's a couple of versions of the story, but basically it involves a man who was on a train and he got in an accident, was decapitated, and now he roams the tracks looking for his head. Now, probably the more interesting story has to do with a man who was at the very back of a train. His train car that he was on became uncoupled from the rest of the train and started slowing down. Unfortunately, there was another train that was barreling down on them from behind, coming right up behind him, smashed into him, and his head was severed in that way. And the light that you see is supposedly this man's lantern. He was waving the lantern back and forth wildly off the back of this train car, trying to signal to the engineer of the other train that he was on the tracks. And unfortunately, the other train did not see him in time and smashed into him. So
Now it's interesting too, as we researched online and read several accounts, eyewitness reports to this mysterious light.
yes.
There were even locals that would take out-of-towners to see this light. There were
Right.
skeptics that were believers after seeing this light.
Yes.
And the question is it some kind of natural phenomenon,
right.
or is it something of the spiritual realm? That is the question.
Mm-hmm.
These ghost lights are a very common report. There are
Yes.
several. As we're looking online, there are several reports from all over the country
Right.
of stretches of train tracks that have these ghost lights on them.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of makes me wonder. We brought up the question, there's so many Civil War battlefields around here, and people report seeing ghosts and mysterious lights in the fields, but none as such as this is so consistent.
It is.
None of these Civil War battlefields seem this consistent where you can go there on any given night
Right.
and supposedly
And
see
see
this
a light.
battle. This light, supposedly you can go there on any given night and see this light.
Right.
So we're going to go down there tonight. We've got a couple investigation tools with us.
Mm-hmm.
We've got some binoculars because this thing appears off in the distance. We want to see if there's any kind of highways or anything that could be accounted for.
Right,
We
right.
looked at an aerial view.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't really see anything in that direction
No.
that would account for any natural explanation for the light.
Right. It is a very straight stretch of tracks, so you can probably see for a couple of miles down the tracks, but there really aren't any lights that would line up from cars, from the headlights of vehicles on roads. The roads pretty much cross the tracks at a perpendicular manner, so there would be nothing there that would be consistently on all the time. Now, one thing we do have to look for is perhaps lights from houses. Some of the porch lights on houses are very, very bright, and it could be that there's a house that sits down the tracks a little ways,
Right.
that just in the right manner, you might be able to see that light.
And one of the theories, of course, was swamp gas.
Right.
Is it swamp gas? We're going to see if we can take a closer look tonight, see if we can find out where this light is spotted, and see if we can see it.
Yes.
So here we go.
Texaco's gonna be open.
I guess we took sort of a gamble when we turned onto this road. I think we were still in Suffolk.
It was like 40
Virginia.
miles ago.
It was quite a ways back, and there was a speedway right there, and I figured, well, I'll go down a little bit better, a little ways, and maybe find something better like a Wawa or perhaps a Sheetz, that beacon of light in the night. But here we are about 40 miles later, and there's no gas station to be found. Now, the problem with this is this road is fairly desolate.
Extremely desolate.
Yeah, I mean, it looks to be a big, 2-lane highway or whatever, but there's some traffic here and there. But as far as gas stations, there's nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking this seems like some kind of a plot that was in a movie I saw.
Yeah.
Where
horror
people were
movie.
going down into North Carolina and they ran out of gas.
Right.
You know, around
right.
some small town, and
Yeah.
at this point, I'm not sure we got enough gas to get back.
Probably not.
To the last gas station that we saw. We'd be pushing it.
Yeah, no, there is hope because we're near the town of Ahoskie and there are gas stations in Ahoskie.
Are
The
there?
question is whether or not they're going to be open at this hour because
Yes.
it's 11:30 in the evening. So a lot of these places might be closed.
Right. So could be a problem.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, luckily, we found a duck through.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to stop here and get some gas.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go inside. I guess I don't really need anything.
No.
You know, kickstart would always be nice, but
Right.
I don't know. There's no sheets around here, huh?
No, unfortunately, there's not. There's only like duck throughs, whatever the hell that is, and there's a couple of little small like Rick's Corner Store that sells gas and things of that nature. But the chances of them being open at this hour are pretty slim.
Yeah.
So I think gas stations like this are going to be the ones that attract the most locals. And,
Right.
You
Absolutely.
know, so you're gonna find a lot of people here. Now, one thing I do have to mention is just looking inside there, they have a menu. So
Yeah, I saw that.
like a food menu. And
Yeah.
there's pizza,
And I see pizza and stuff like that.
burgers and chicken dip, but they sell like they're advertising fish fillets, livers and gizzards, and chicken dippers. So I mean, we are in southern country, you know, where they eat that kind of thing, but
Right.
you know, I mean, do they really eat so many livers and gizzards that they have to advertise it?
Oh no. Some gizzards and a kickstart don't sound bad though.
Yes, it does.
So here we are, stopped by the railroad crossing, and the scenery around here is pretty interesting
It is.
because there's all abandoned buildings.
Yeah, lots
You
of
know,
them.
I'm not sure if that was the train station to the right there, but that looks
Yeah.
like a very old abandoned place. If you can see it out
It
there,
does. I'm not sure you
hold
can
that
even
light
see
up
it.
there, and let's see if we can kind of see
Yeah.
that old building out there. But
No.
so what we're gonna do now is kind of drive around, I guess, till we find a good vantage point.
Right.
The light is only visible coming from one direction.
Right.
So, unfortunately, there was a little pull-off up there, but there was a car parked in it.
Yeah, although it didn't seem like there was anybody in the car, but around here you don't want to pull up behind a car that's parked there and, you know.
Right. Now, also, some of the accounts that we've read said that they actually drove around to a couple different railroad crossings
Right.
till they were able to catch a glimpse of the light.
Yeah, there is another one. You can see the same stretch of tracks from further down the tracks where a road actually crosses the tracks down there. So we could go down there and see if we can see anything from that end as well.
All right, so we found another railroad crossing, and you said that the tracks here, they curve.
Right, between the point that we were at a few minutes ago, where it crosses the tracks, and this one, the tracks actually make a very slight curve. So we can't see down the straight stretch of tracks that you're supposed to see this light on from this vantage point. But it makes a good point. If they're looking down the straight stretch of tracks in this direction, there's nothing out here that they could see that has a bright light on it. I mean, there's a factory out here, but I mean, really, where these tracks line up and would point directly to, there's nothing but a big, giant field out here.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking in this direction, which would be like northeast on the tracks, there's really nothing out here that could explain what that light would be.
So we need to go back to the crossing at Early Station and look towards the town of
Outlander. Aulander.
Okay, and that's the stretch of track somewhere between
Outlander
and
the point we were just at.
And Early Station is where they see the light.
Supposed to be where they see the light.
Okay. All right, so let's go back down to Early Station and see if we can observe the tracks down there a little bit.
Right, and if we can't, we might be able to go down to the Outlander side and park down there.
And you can see them from the Outlander side.
Right.
Because the train was supposed to come into Early Station.
It did come in, yes.
Okay.
It was supposed to return to Early Station, I believe, and it never made it back.
Okay. All right, so just to give you an idea of what's around here, the tracks go off to the left there, right in front of this factory or whatever this building is. And up here ahead is the railroad crossing that we're sitting at. Alright, so here we are coming back up on the Early Station crossing. And we're going to observe here for a couple minutes and see if we can see this light that you're supposed to see. I believe it should be coming from our right on the tracks. Is that correct?
Yes.
So there's a shot down the tracks from Early Station crossing. This time when we're back there by the Early Station crossing, the car was occupied. People were back in the car. So we're thinking that maybe they were taking a hike down the tracks, looking for the light as well. But I think what we're going to do is go down towards the Outlander side.
Right.
And see what we can see from there. If nothing, hopefully when we come back, that car will be moved from that spot, because that was a good observation point where they were parked.
Right.
And it was like the only pull-off.
Yeah.
So hopefully they'll be moved and we can kind of pull over on the side of the road and observe for a little bit.
Yeah.
So here we are coming up on the next vantage point for the light.
Yep, this is it.
It's a railroad crossing right here.
Yeah.
So we're going up here to make a U-turn so we can see down the tracks from the right angle. But we think we might have seen the same car that was over at the other railroad crossing. We think they're here because it looks like the same car, and they're lingering around the railroad crossing here. So it could very well be. And that's them coming up on us right now.
Sure is.
This is weird.
They're starting to piss me off, is what they're doing.
Yeah, there
That
they
is the
are.
same car.
That's the same car.
Son of a bitch.
So they're taking the good vantage points. That's the problem here, because somehow they beat us over here, even though they were parked when we left at the last railroad crossing.
Right. They're stopping back there.
Oh, maybe we can go back to Early Station and get that good pull-off then.
We might have to.
Jeez.
Yeah, 'cause these sons of bitches. Now, one thing I did notice, I do have to note, that as we crossed the railroad tracks there, if you looked away from where you were supposed to look, there were lights down at the end of those tracks. There was specifically a light. Now, it did look like a headlights of a car that might have been crossing at another place. You know what I'm saying?
I didn't see it.
There were lights
Is it
down
from
in
the
the other
direction?
direction.
Where the opposite direction where the light is supposed to come from?
Right. Supposedly you're supposed to look back up
okay.
toward the area that we were at originally at Early Station. But when you look the opposite direction, I did see lights down there.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
I wonder if people are seeing, well, but they're, I don't know. Because they say they're coming from the opposite direction, but
Yeah.
maybe people get turned around because it is. I mean, this is a desolate area. It's just a
It
road
is.
with nothing.
Yeah, and it would be fairly easy to get turned around.
Yeah. Alright, so here we are coming back up to the early station crossing. And hopefully we'll have some better luck this time. Maybe a good vantage point. So we're going into night vision mode here. And we're just going to get out and take a look around. And of course lock the car.
Yes. It's kind of loud.
And see what we see. The tracks are over here.
Yes.
And we're not going to go on the tracks because we're not, that is considered trespassing. But we are just going to walk up to the street here and perhaps walk to where we can just kind of see down the tracks.
Yeah, which at this point we can see down the tracks.
My screen shut off. I'm assuming it's still recording.
Most likely.
I
Hopefully.
just wish I could see it.
You don't want to just use your phone with the light?
There we go. All right. This looks like we're still recording here. And there we are. Now, Linda was saying as we look down this way, can't see a whole lot too far down there. But if we were to see this light coming from the neighboring town, it could potentially be that same light that Linda saw, which appeared to be headlights crossing the tracks.
Yes. It is supposed to be an extremely straight stretch of tracks that goes down here. So it stands to reason that from the early station side where we're at, you should be able to look down the tracks and at some point be able to see a light every so often. Now, the light that I saw appeared to be lights from a headlight, like from a car that was passing over the tracks at a point even further down. But as just standing here right now, I really don't see anything. Oh, there goes a light. There was a quick little flash of white light down the tracks. Now we have to also keep in mind, and this may be another explanation for it, we have people at that point down there. That same damn silver car that was floating around up here that forced us to go to the other side is now down at the other point. So it could be that we might see a flashlight of theirs bobbling around down there. That could very well be an explanation as to what this light is. It may be somebody at the other point on the tracks doing exactly what we're doing.
Absolutely. And if they were to get out up here because it looked like their car was parked here and they were not in it, if they were to get out here and walk down the tracks, perhaps from that other crossing, it may look like someone carried a lantern down the tracks.
Right.
So perhaps people are catching wind of this urban legend, coming out and checking it out, and seeing other people walking around with lights
Right.
down the track. That's
And
one theory, of
It is
course.
a theory, yes. Now, if you keep watching, there is a quick flash of light every so often down the tracks there.
And I'm not sure if we're going to pick it up with the camera here
Perhaps not.
because it's so far down.
But I'm thinking what we should do is turn on our flashlight and wave it around wildly and make those people think that they're looking at the ghost light.
Well, why not? Let's freak them out.
Yeah, sure. I've got this tactical light, which is will illuminate anything. So they'll see this thing from like a mile away. Now, right about now, they're probably starting to cuss. Like, what the hell is that?
Jeez.
And there you have it. in a couple of weeks, we'll probably have a video from one of their cell phones that'll pop up online.
And there's your ghost light.
And there's my tactical
I don't know,
flashlight.
but I did just see a light cross over the tracks down there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the camera caught it, because the range is, of course, limited, and we're looking probably a couple miles down this straight stretch of track.
Right.
But, yeah, I definitely believe that was a car crossing over the tracks that we just saw.
Was.
Or perhaps those people shining their flashlights up here to see what the heck that light was.
Could be.
I don't
Very
know.
well could be.
But we might need to venture back down to that other side.
I think we might.
And, see what we can see from there. Because if we can see the light coming from here, now once again, what's to say it's not cars just crossing over this railroad crossing here?
Right. Now, I have to say that from a non-skeptical standpoint, the light that they describe seeing is more of a golden light that bobs and waves back and forth. It wouldn't necessarily be the quick white flash that you would see from headlights on a car that's crossing over the tracks.
Right.
So, that's one thing to keep in mind here.
But it could be people walking, like these people seemed that they parked their car here and walked down the tracks.
Out, yes.
It could be people walking down the tracks.
Yes.
With a flashlight, trying to look for the light.
That also doesn't really explain why people see this light supposedly almost every night or every other night. During the week, there's not going to be people walking down the tracks with flashlights all the time. So, but on a night like tonight or a Friday night, Saturday night, there's certainly going to be people down there.
Absolutely. What else is there to do around here except to go to the Duck Inn?
Right, and that wasn't really that happening of a place.
It was happening,
so,
but
yeah,
it wasn't happening for me.
happening in a wrong way.
All right, so here we are coming back up on the railroad crossing from the town of, what is it?
Well, we're now near the Outlander side.
Outlander.
The town of Outlander, looking toward the Ahoskie end of it.
Okay, and that would be right down that way into the dark.
Your destination is on the right.
So looking down the tracks, that's the direction that we're supposed to see the light coming from. So we're going to do a little bit of a stakeout here, and keep an eye out down the tracks and see if we can possibly see any lights from
this point
down to
Ahoskie. Yeah.
Right. And we're thinking that because of that railroad crossing where we were at, it's a straight track, and we were seeing what we believe to be cars crossing up here at this railroad crossing. We want to see if we can see anything like that down that way. Now keep in mind, the whole time we were there, no cars came by.
Right.
So it may be a little bit before we actually see something, if we see anything. Yeah. Looking down the tracks this way. Now this is away from Early Station. There is a very dim light down there, and it's constant. It is constant.
Yes.
I'm thinking it may be one of those lights that's on those electric boxes.
It could be.
Remember near the track at both of the crossings, the other two crossings we were at, there was a little light on the side of that box. And maybe one of those. Or it could even be our headlights reflecting on something due to the angle of the track.
Right.
But we did see a bright white light down there, which, once again, I believe to be a car crossing over the track. It's, only there for a second. And we'll keep the camera rolling here for a little bit, see if we can pick it up. That light that was down there, okay, I still see it. You can't see it on the camera.
No.
But it is down there.
And part of the reason you probably can't see it on the camera is because it's so dim, you can barely see it with the naked eye.
Right, like when I look at the viewfinder of the camera and I look away, back to that light, I can't see it until my eyes adjust to the darkness for a few minutes.
I'm keeping a constant watch on the opposite direction on the tracks here. And so far I see absolutely nothing.
There we go. And I'm not sure if it caught in the viewfinder, but definitely a car crossing over the tracks again down that end. So we stopped off at a Love's here, and we lost our light, but I think we got enough light from outside. I don't know. Now, I think we're going to need this light because we got some interesting stuff here at this Love's. I got a bacon cheddar hot dog, and I threw some jalapenos and onions and pickle relish on there.
Yeah.
And you
I
got
the
some...
make your own, like, customizable nachos there.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
that
they
looks
look pretty
doesn't it?
good. Yep.
Now, we also got some these peanuts that we're going to try here. Limited edition Tabasco flavored peanuts.
Yep.
And they're extra spicy, so
Right.
I'm not sure how spicy that is. But
Yep.
perhaps in the tradition of paranormal pit stops, if you will,
Yep.
we will debrief
Mm-hmm.
while we indulge in
Right.
some food, I guess, here.
Yep. So I have to say that, I wasn't real impressed, of course, when you get to the location of the ghost lights and stuff, and you see that you're looking down the tracks in one direction, and that you can see it from both directions. I mean, it's not like these situations like Cohoe Crossing in West Point, Virginia, where you're looking down in one direction and seeing lights, and there's not a possibility of it being somebody down the tracks at the other point with a flashlight. It's not really like that. And but I would have liked to have spent a lot more time out there. But
We were out there for about 2 hours.
we were
Going
out there
back
for a
and forth to
while.
different railroad
Yeah.
crossings and different
Yeah.
places where you could supposedly see the light.
Yeah, but I do wonder how many people get out there and see somebody down the tracks at the other end with a flashlight walking around down there and think that they're looking at the ghost light.
Right.
And film it.
And one thing that I think would kind of throw that idea out the window in some situations, I'm sure in a lot of situations people probably see other people walking with flashlights.
Mm-hmm.
But there have been stories that I've read, and I don't know how valid they are, but where people have claimed to walk towards this light, and they walked and walked and walked, and they never actually made it up to the light. So that's kind of
Right.
weird, though I highly doubt someone actually walked from the railroad crossing at Early Station all the way up to the next town, because that's several miles. I mean, it was a 10-minute drive. I don't think anyone actually walked all the way up there, so that's one thing. Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to go back, and I'd like to get another group in another separate car and do some tests, and have one car park at Early Station and another car go up to the other railroad crossing where we're at,
Right.
and shine some flashlights, walk around with flashlights, turn on the car headlights, and radio back and forth to each other and tell each other what we're seeing, so that we can kind of see, does this kind of fit the description of what people are seeing? I definitely think if we were down at the railroad crossing and those people that were parked when they were walking down the tracks, if we had seen them walking down the tracks with flashlights, we could have easily mistaken that for the light.
I think so.
The other lights, I think people clearly, we caught one of them on video of what it looked like with a car crossing the tracks. Every once in a while there'd be a car that would go across, and that would give off a very bright light down the track. I can't say that we debunked it by any means, because this is just what we saw. What we saw was cars crossing the track. We came up with some explanations for what could be. But there's also the very real possibility that there is an anomaly out there. There is a ghost light. There could be something in the spiritual realm that is lingering out there that people are indeed seeing.
Right.
What we've explained could account for some of the reports, some of the stories.
Yes.
But it definitely
Yes.
may not account for all of them. One thing I find interesting is that there are so many stories of ghost lights on train tracks.
Mm-hmm.
They almost all that I've read, and I didn't read an extensive amount. I looked up about 5 in various states across the country.
Mm-hmm.
They all seem to involve a conductor who was beheaded at some point and
Why
walks
is
around
that?
with a lantern looking for his head.
Why is that?
I don't know. This could very well be the equivalent of the Crybaby Bridge.
Right.
Every state has a Crybaby Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Like Crawford Road. There's some that are
Mm-hmm.
just called Crybaby Bridge, where they see a ghost of a woman who's looking for her child or who hung herself from the bridge, and these stories, they don't have
Yeah.
any truth.
Yeah.
A lot of them are just purely urban legends. Some of them do have some truth to them. Some of them are
Mm-hmm.
just purely urban legend. And I wonder if at some point someone mistakenly saw one of these lights, which was either a car light or
Yeah.
at that point maybe not someone walking along with a flashlight, and came up with this story.
Right. And they may have looked online, or they may have, heard the story from somewhere else and decided that that was probably the explanation for it,
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now, I do know that some of these stories go back a lot farther than when we had the internet as well. So, that can't be the case in all of them.
Well, that was what was interesting with one of them. The Historical Society looked into it in one of the cases. I forget what it was. I think it was out in Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
And the reports of the ghost light out in that particular location predated the road that was in that area where the cars now
Right.
you can see their headlights from. So they were seeing this light before there was even a road there. Some of the reports went back to like the early 1900s,
Right.
which was probably before there was, even cars on the road at that point, let alone a road being there.
Yeah, now there's also the common explanation that people come up with of swamp gas.
Yes.
Now, what's your take on the whole swamp gas thing?
Well, that is one interesting thing. I have never seen swamp gas,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't really have anything to compare it to as far as illuminating of this gas that lights up.
Mm-hmm.
But one common thing with where these ghost lights are seen, all of them seemed to be at a swamp
Mm-hmm.
where swamp gas has been reported. So that could be a very real explanation. However, in the case where some of the descriptions, and of course it's all how we perceive stuff, I don't know how someone would perceive swamp gas as someone swinging a lantern down the tracks. Because
Right.
now, once again, you got to consider the source, you got to consider the witness. I think a lantern has a very distinct light to it.
It
like
does.
if you look down the tracks.
It does.
Now, if it's too far away to make out what it is and you just see a light, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But if it's anywhere relatively close, you can kind of tell it's the glow of a lantern.
You definitely can. And another question I have about the whole swamp gas theory is that why would this supposed swamp gas only collect on railroad tracks?
Yes.
If it's the kind of thing that is going to form in an area that is heavily swampy, then why just there?
Right.
People
exactly.
would be explaining. People would be seeing this illuminated swamp gas all over the whole area. I mean,
Right.
Look at the Great Dismal Swamp we've got down there, just before you get to the border of North Carolina. People don't talk about seeing swamp gases there.
Right.
So, why just railroad tracks?
Another explanation with some of them was quartz. It had something to do with a fault line and the amount of pressure that it was putting on the quartz that was in the area that was actually causing these visible sparks to light up.
Now,
But-
that's certainly an interesting one, but that can't be the explanation for places like West Point. I don't believe there's any faults that run through
Right.
West Point. So, there may very well be some quartz under there, but, probably not.
Right.
It just doesn't seem like a quartzy area.
And like I said, it's interesting because people have been seeing these lights for years. There are people that are in their 50s and, remember going out to this 30 35 years ago and seeing these lights.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, scientists have tried to debunk them. And they couldn't. They couldn't figure out what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there were some cases where they were debunked. I think it was, I could be wrong in the state, I believe it was Michigan. There were some students.
Tech, yeah, or something, yeah.
There were some students, some college students, that were actually able to debunk
Mm-hmm.
and say the Sci-Fi Channel had went out to this particular one, Fact or Faked, I believe it was, and they weren't able to debunk it. But then this group of college kids goes out, they get a telescope and a couple other devices, observation devices,
Mm-hmm.
and they're able to determine that these lights are actually coming from a road. So
Yeah, that's interesting.
some were explained, some weren't.
Yeah.
Tonight, we did come up with, like I said, some possible scenarios, some possible explanations.
Yeah.
I don't believe we definitely debunked it, because we really don't know what the other people are seeing when they're out there.
Right.
But at this point in time, we didn't see anything paranormal by any means that couldn't
And
be
it may
explained.
be easier to debunk if we had seen it.
Exactly.
So, you know.
Exactly. But there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the early station ghost light in North Carolina. So thanks for watching this short little video here. I'm not sure how short it was, but thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to our channel.
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't like the video, maybe the next one will be better. So go ahead and subscribe anyway. Until next time, I'm Jeff.
I'm Linda.
And thanks for watching.